conflicting because decades have been passed, but still there is so much debate about this, which fluid we should use, whether we should use liberal or restricted versus colloid versus crystalloid. Now there is one more important concept of this endothelial glycocalyx layer. So basically the intra-endothelial cell, inside the endothelial cell, there is a glycocalyx layer which is semi-permeable to membrane, semi-permeable, and through which small molecules like electrolyte and water can freely pass. And this subglycocalyal layer has sufficient around 1000 ml of the capacity, and which is very much part of the intravascular volume. As we can see that this is endothelium, and this is endothelial glycocalyx, which is semi-permeable, and below this subglycocalyal layer is also, you can see the below endothelial glycocalyx layer. And this is potential space where electrolyte and water can travel and can stay. And this concept has changed, as Mohit sir has told that previously we were talking about that when colloid versus crystalloid was 1, 2, 3, but because when we infuse crystalloid, it stays there. So this subglycocalyal layer is also, you can see the below endothelial glycocalyx layer. And this is potential space where electrolyte and water can travel and can stay. And this concept has changed, as Mohit sir has told that previously we were talking about that when colloid versus crystalloid was 1, 2, 3, but because when we infuse crystalloid, it stays there here because it has a capacity of around 1 liter. So it stays very much inside the intravascular, and it has a plasma volume expansion much more than we used to thought earlier. And that's why it is around 1:5 to 1. Means in comparison to colloid, now it is around 1:1.5. And because it is a semi-permeable membrane, it doesn't allow larger molecules, so the colloids are excluded from it. Colloids will remain in the plasma, and that's why they will have diluting effect more than the crystalloids. While crystalloids are initially distributed throughout the plasma and HGL volume, and they form intravascular volume only. So their dilutional effects are less. However, a proportion, and because they still remain in the plasma, so whatever we thought earlier, it is around 1.5:1. That means 3:1 is not right now. It is usually 1.5 of the crystalloid in comparison to colloid. And it has been also seen by various studies like clearance of crystalloid is slower than general anesthesia. So because of the stay and because of the slower clearance, now this is 1.5 of 1:1 of concept is there. Initially, it was thought that only 20% is remaining, but now large trials has been shown that around 70% crystalloids remain at the end of 20 minutes, and around 50% stays at the end of 30 minutes. Although patient resuscitated with crystalloid, they will have more positive valence, and which may lead to edema, especially in the compliant spaces like lung, gut, and soft tissues. Now, I described about the differences of all these crystalloids. Like hyperchloremic metabolic acidosis is 0.9% solution. One thing I would like to increase in incidences of kidney injury, but regarding lactate and acetate, balanced salt solution crystalloid, lactate, it undergoes hepatic oxidation and to produce bicarbonate in the citric acid cycle, and the clearance of lactate is around 200 millimole per hour, which is very high whatever we infuse. And that's why even in some amount of liver derangement, we can use it. Although in the severe liver damage or in the advanced liver stage, we should avoid. Acetate has even more faster metabolism because it metabolizes from liver, muscle, and heart, and it has around 300 millimole per hour. Another thing which differentiates between crystalloid and normal saline, balanced crystalloid and normal saline, that excretion of water and electrolyte load with balanced crystalloid is more rapid because they are slightly hypotonic, so they transiently decreases the plasma tonicity, and because of this there is suppression of ADH hormone, and which allows diuresis. While normal saline, which is slightly hypertonic, so it after infusion it increases plasma tonicity, which causes a hypothalamus to secrete ADH, which causes retention of water. So it's the normal clearance of normal saline is delayed in comparison of crystalloid, and also it causes less degree of acidosis because normal saline causes a reduction in the strong line differences. Some negative effects about like ringer lactate has a racemic mixture of L-lactate and D-lactate. In our body, there is mainly L-lactate. D-lactate is very small quantity. And some concerns about D-lactate may cause encephalopathy and cardiac toxicity. Although in various studies it has been shown that while giving Ringer lactate with this content with a racemic solution, chances of this effect of D-lactate is less. And although metabolism of D-lactate is nearly as rapid as L-lactate. So it should not be a matter of concern. Although we should avoid severe liver failure because it will mainly depend on liver metabolism. Like colloids, most of the things has been said earlier because it is excluded from the glycocalyx layer. Because it is excluded from the glycocalyx layer, it has higher oncotic pressure and it minimizes transcapillary filtration. Side effects has already been told, and that's why the starch has been banned in European countries and in US. Although gelatins and things are other in use, but they are being used less. Now regarding intravascular volume, because intravascular volume decides the preload and cardiac output, so it is core of adequate tissue perfusion. Excessive fluid and hypovolemia, they both are dangerous and they can add to postoperative morbidity. So we need to find a sweet spot and find balance between hypovolemia and hypervolemia. So what are the practical aspects and management of perioperative thing? Because it's the fluid requirement is quite dynamic and there is a very much inter-individual variability. And different fluid requirements are there in every phase, like in preoperative, intraoperative, and postoperative. And also depends upon loss or maintenance, whatever fluid we are going to lose. And also depends on patient's weight, its comorbid conditions, and surgical factors. So the goal of fluid therapy should mainly is to adequate volume to support the cellular oxygen delivery and to avoid any excessive volume overload, sodium and chloride load, and also excess of lactate, acetate, or gluconate. So now how much is to give? So quantity can be decided by two ways. First, which we have been doing since ages, like by estimating per kg body weight and duration of surgery and nature of loss. And second is goal-directed therapy, in which certain individual physiological parameters are measured by invasive monitoring, like cardiac output monitoring, stroke volume, by esophageal Doppler, or by flow track. And by this, we can set an end point and we can give fluid to meet that end point. This is called goal-directed therapy. And because in this goal-directed therapy, suppose your cardiac index, we have set a criteria of 3 liters and per minute square. So if it is less, then we have to give 250 ml. Various studies they gave around 250 ml of colloids mostly, and few have been crystalloids also, until there is increase in 10% of the stroke volume. And when it reaches to the flatter portion of Sterling curve, Frank Sterling curve, then we stop giving fluid. So this goal-directed therapy is useful, and various studies have shown that it is quite useful in especially high-risk patients. Now we have to target overall fluid balance, and again there is a big debate regarding restricted fluid versus liberal fluid. Recently, few studies were in favor of restricted fluid, and slowly they went on to the very restriction, I mean zero balance. But it has been seen, and recently a relief trial which has done in around 3,000 or more than patients in major abdominal surgeries, in which they use restricted versus moderate liberal. Restricted, where they have used around 3.7 liters, while in moderate they have used around 6 liters with, and they allowed around weight gain of 1.6 kg. And what they have shown that in restricted group, there are chances of renal injury and surgical site infection was more. So they have warned against consequences of excessive fluid restriction. And also this study has set a benchmark that we can allow, especially after major abdominal surgery, around a fluid positive gain of 1 to 1.5 liters, or in terms of weight gain similarly. Now I have told about goal-directed therapy, basically measuring 4 key variable factors, and we have to target the defined endpoint. And we'll infuse boluses of 250 ml to increase the stroke volume. And in a large meta-analysis that has shown that it is associated with reduction in post-operative morbidity and hospital length of the stay. Various studies, they have mixed results, but most of the results are in agreement that it should be used during intra-op and for some period of post-operative period in high-risk group patients. Studies, they have mixed results, but most of the results are in agreement that it should be used during intra-op and for some period of post-operative period in high-risk group patients. Now, selection of the fluid. Again, if we are talking about maintenance fluid or evaporation loss, then crystalloids are the main choice. Crystalloids should be given. But again, when it comes to the plasma volume expansion, then it is still not clear whether to use colloid or crystalloid. Crystalloids may be as effective because, as I've already showed, because of this glycocalyx layer theory, we require only 50% of the more volume than colloid. But still, they may cause fluid overload condition in susceptible patients, especially in the critically ill patients, and it will lead to the increased GI edema, pulmonary edema, cerebral edema, various things can be there, increased chances of infection. And now, because it has been discouraged, colloid has been discouraged because in critical care population it has been studied that there is increased requirement of renal replacement theory. But surgical population is slightly different from this critical care patient. Still is not clear, so we should be very cautious, especially in high risk patients. We should not use it, like in sepsis patient or critically ill patient or renal impairment patient. Otherwise, with plasma expansion, we can use colloid, but within safe doses. So in preoperative, because preoperative fasting has been reduced, and even studies have shown that fasting will not have any effect, doesn't have any effect on the blood volume. So fasting, we can omit fasting thing and replacement of fasting fluid. But especially the bowel preparation has been done. Usually it causes loss of significant amount of water and potassium, so it should be supplemented along with it. And the patients who have gastric losses, like from upper GI loss, there is mainly loss of sodium, potassium and chloride. So it should be replaced with isotonic saline with potassium, while large bowel losses, they are mainly potassium. So it should be with the balanced crystalloid with potassium. Now, when it comes to intraoperative, like insensible loss, which we are apart from there, so maintenance fluid we are giving for our respiratory loss or urine output, and apart from this insensible, when there is any anatomical compartment is being opened, and evaporation of the loss from the evaporation of the fluid from mucosal surface. But in hepatic chamber studies, it has been shown that it is as little as 1 ml per kg per hour, so it is not much. So what they have suggested that a background infusion of 1 to 1.5 ml per kg per hour crystalloid should be given as a maintenance requirement. While after induction of the general anesthesia, there will be hypotension, which is because of the vasodilatation and myocardial suppression. So until these patients are hypovolemic, so we have to rule out hypovolemia or inadequate tissue perfusion. We should not give fluid. If they are hypovolemic, definitely. Otherwise, they should be treated with small dose of vasopressor or inotropes. And in high-risk patients, gold additive therapy should be used. For blood loss, we should use again colloid, blood products or crystalloid, which may be used. But again, excessive fluid has to be given. Some amount of extra fluid has to be given. That should have been kept in the mind. So overall goal is to achieve the euvolemia by nasal surgery. Now, intraoperative period, there is a suppression of the urine production because of the stress-induced release of the ADS secretion, and also because of positive pressure ventilation, which causes increased intrathoracic pressure, decreased cardiac output, which may lead to decreased urinary output. So as a result, late intraoperative period and early postoperative period, even urine output may be low regardless of the volume of IV fluid administered. Now, when we come to the postoperative thing, again, high-risk patients, gold additive therapy. Now, electrolytes has to be monitored because, and fluid requirement has been should be divided in various categories. Electrolytes should be monitored because post-operative phase is a case of a state of salt and water retention, because there is a release of ADS, there is a release because of stress, and because of tissue injury, there is a release of renin-angiotensin activation and aldosterone, which they all cause salt and water retention. So in this condition, the replacement fluid ideally should be slightly hypotonic with low dose of sodium, because if we give normal saline too much, there may be hyperchloremia, hypernatremia, and if we give only free water like 5% dextrose, there may be dilutional hyponatremia. So electrolyte has to be monitored daily, and in high-risk group, it should be monitored twice at least. Rate of maintenance fluid again should be 1 to 1.2 ml per kg per hour. In obesity, because the total body water is less, so ideal body weight should be considered. Lower sodium should be given like 50 to 100 milliequivalent in 24 hours, and potassium around 40 to 80 milliequivalent. So apart from balanced crystalloid, we should use along with it 0.18% saline with 4% extrusion with slightly hypotonic. But again, we have to keep in mind that there may be dilutional hyponatremia, so the electrolyte should be monitored. And especially if there is any hypovolemia, then we should not increase this maintenance dose. This has to be in the same rate, and we have to separately address that losses. And oral intake should be increases. Oral intake as fast as it should be allowed, like in ERAS protocol. So whatever volume is going to be lost, we have to monitor, like adequacy of organ perfusion, like mental state, lactate, mixed unit saturation, whatever monitoring we have, and it should be given according to that. And we should consider that from where this loss is happening, like from upper GI tract or lower GI tract. Upper GI tract, isotonic saline. Lower GI tract, because of mainly potassium, we can rebalance this blood with potassium. Now, loss of third space, about third space, they are saying now that third space referring to the cavities like ascites. So, ascites has been drained intraoperatively, post-operatively or late intraoperatively, there will be reaccumulation in that space. And this is actually the third space here they are referring. And this should be, again, if it is, it should be replaced with mixture of colloid or crystalloid. And blood should be replaced with colloid or blood products. Post-operative oliguria, which is again concerned, it should be interpreted cautiously because it is sodium and water retention condition because of ADH and aldosterone. So we should assess that whether patient is evolving or not. And if there is not, so we should search for evidences of the impaired end organ perfusion, and alternative causes of oliguria should be sought. And in absence of hypovolemia, fluid challenge may cause post-operative fluid overload and hypernatremia. And if we are using hypotonic solution, it may cause dilution hyponatremia. So we have to be very cautious in post-operative. Now in hepatic failure patients, because they have their pathophysiology and which is because of this relative vasodilatation, so take-home message is that endothelial glycocalyx, which forms a protein-poor intravascular fluid, but a substantial portion of infused crystalloid remain in the blood volume within HCl, and that's why the ratio of crystalloid to produce equal effect is 1.5:1. And especially in the perioperative goal-directed therapy may be prudent in the high-risk patient, and crystalloids are still are rational choice for the replacement of evaporative losses and maintenance fluid. And toxicity of colloid and overweight of the crystalloid should be balanced, should be judged while giving colloid or crystalloid. And post-operative oliguria we should keep in mind. And with moderate liberal fluid regime, we can allow patient to wait to gain around 1.1 to 1.5 liters of the fluid at the surgery, which is quite beneficial. So.